Prime Video and Amazon MGM Studios are up to their old tricks, trotting out so-called experts in order to defend their disastrous and abominable The Lord of the Rings of Power show. This time, they did not go to the UK and find a DEI expert masquerading as a Tolkien expert. This time, they went to YouTube, a guy who runs his own university and calls himself the Tolkien Professor. That is who they went to try and defend this absolute garbage show. Before we get to this, I'd like to ask, please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss any of our future videos here at the Trent Report. I wrote this up over at thatparkplace.com. And there you go. You see on your screen, Corey Olsen, the guy they went to, calls himself the Tolkien Professor. And he made the absolutely absurd claim that there's no such thing really as canon in Tolkien while defending the Rings of Power. In fact, it was actually uploaded here to the Lord of the Rings on Prime official account on X. Let's just listen to what this guy had to say right here.
First thing to specify is that there's no such thing really as canon in Tolkien. Tolkien's ideas were ever evolving.
There you go. He claims there is no such thing as canon in Tolkien because his ideas were ever evolving. It's absolutely absurd on its face, but J.R.R. Tolkien makes it clear that this guy has no clue what he is talking about. He wrote an essay called On Fairy Stories, where he makes it clear that one becomes a successful sub-creator by indeed adhering to the canon of the story. And this is what he wrote in that essay. What really happens is that the story maker proves a successful sub-creator. He makes a secondary world which your mind can enter. Inside it, what he relates is true. It accords with the laws of that world. You therefore believe it while you are, as it were, inside. So I think that is abundantly clear there what Tolkien is saying. He makes a secondary world which your mind can enter. Inside it, what he relates is true. It accords with the laws of that world. So clearly, there are indeed laws of the world. There is indeed a canon. There are things that are true when you step into a secondary world, such as Middle-earth and the Lord of the Rings. And what is this guy trying to say? He's trying to say that's not true, even though Tolkien literally wrote an essay about this subject and says that it is true. I mean, this guy is calling himself a Tolkien professor, but he clearly doesn't know anything about Tolkien. And what he is doing is he's selling himself out. But he's selling himself out while also destroying his own reputation. And I don't think it's going to help his business, which is his university that he runs, which I think is probably why he's doing this, just trying to raise awareness for his own personal business. And he's willing to sell himself out in order to do that. And I don't think it is going to be helping him whatsoever. It is likely going to hurt him. Anyways, Tolkien goes on and says, the moment disbelief arises, the spell is broken. The magic, or rather art, has failed. You are then out in the primary world again, looking at the little abortive secondary world from outside. If you are obliged by kindliness or circumstance to stay, then disbelief must be suspended or stifled. Otherwise, listening and looking would become intolerable. But this suspension of disbelief is a substitute for the genuine thing, a subterfuge we use when condescending to games or make-believe, or when trying, more or less willingly, to find what virtue we can in the work of an art that has for us failed. So Tolkien, very clear there that if you do not adhere to canon, the moment disbelief arises, the spell is broken, the magic, or rather art, has failed. Makes this very clear, very clear. This is all in his essay on fairy stories. Did not take a lot of research to find this. For someone calling themselves a Tolkien professor, one would think that they would have known about this. And I think he does. I think he does know about this. I think he knows that he's lying, and he doesn't care. He does not care. Furthermore, Tolkien specifically noted that there is canon in The Lord of the Rings in a letter he sent to Forrest J. Ackerman, wherein he provided comments on a film treatment for the Lord of the Rings by Morton Zimmerman. I talked about this film treatment before. Tolkien absolutely blisters the film treatment, calls it out for the disgrace that it was. And then I share some portions of it here. So this was it's letter 210 if you have Tolkien's letters. And this is what he wrote. If Zimmerman and or others do so, they may be irritated or aggrieved by the tone of many of my criticisms. If so, I am sorry, though not surprised. But I would ask them to make an effort of imagination sufficient to understand the irritation and on occasion the resentment of an author who finds increasingly as he proceeds, his work treated as it would seem carelessly in general, in places recklessly, and with no evident signs of any appreciation of what it is all about. I think those are kind of soft words that he would probably apply to the Rings of Power as well if he saw what that show has done to his work. And then here he says this: the canons of narrative art in any medium cannot be wholly different. Well, there you go. Literally talking about a film treatment of the Lord of the Rings, talking about the fact that there is indeed a canon for the Lord of the Rings, and that even if you try to adapt it to a different medium, such as film, such as TV, away from the original source material, which is his novels, they cannot be wholly different. And he's also saying there is indeed canon. This is obviously very clear. There is indeed canon in the Lord of the Rings. J.R.R. Tolkien says it right here, letter 210. But the Tolkien professor, who probably knows about this letter, knows that there is indeed canon in Tolkien, is deciding to sell himself out for Amazon, and just is lying, is absolutely just lying to try and defend this garbage show. Anyways, Tolkien continues and says, and the failure of poor films is often precisely an exaggeration and in the intrusion of unwarranted matter owing to not receiving where the core of the original lies. And he's 100% on point with this. We've been talking about this for years. Tolkien was talking about it before I was even alive, and he is 100% correct on this matter. When these people try and create adaptations and completely rewrite them, completely change them, it ruins the actual film. It ruins the film because they are not staying true to the core of where the original lies. And that's exactly what Amazon is facing here. They are seeing massive declining in viewership. We're looking at almost 50% decline just from the season 1 premiere to the season 2 premiere. We saw a Hollywood Reporter report noting that 63% of people did not finish the first season. And I think that's probably the same case. We're looking at season 2. We've seen those viewership numbers, whether that is from Illuminate or from Nielsen, steadily decline week over week over week. They are losing viewership. In fact, the Illuminate data show that this show was performing worse than The Acolyte, worse than Lucasfilm's The Acolyte. That is how terrible this show is performing, because people realize that this show has nothing to do with J.R.R. Tolkien. It has removed itself from his canon, and I think it's actually been trying to destroy his canon, because the people behind this have the philosophy that is espoused by Kylo Ren in The Last Jedi. This is what they believe. They believe, let the past die, kill it if you have to, and then they will try to rewrite it in their own image. That is exactly what they're trying to do here, because they think they are better than J.R.R. Tolkien, and they are actually they hate his actual philosophy. They hate the themes that he puts into the Lord of the Rings, and they want to destroy that, and they will twist it and do everything that they can to do that. Ironically, Tolkien pointed out how that ideology works in the Lord of the Rings when Frodo talks to Sam about the orcs and how they were created. But let's get back to this letter here. Tolkien lampoons the script and its deviations from his canon. At one point, I mean, the whole letter is just him just absolutely savaging this film script. At one point, he says this: why on earth should Zimmerman say that the hobbits were munching ridiculously long sandwiches? Ridiculous indeed. I do not see how any author could be expected to be pleased by such silly alterations. One hobbit was sleeping, the other smoking. He even criticized how the Tower of Orthanc was depicted. The spiral staircase weaving around the Tower Orthanc comes from Zimmerman's fancy, not my tale. I prefer the latter. The tower was 500 feet high. There was a flight of 27 steps leading to the great door, above which was a window and a balcony. So I think it's very clear that Tolkien did indeed have a canon, because he's literally talking about these minute details. I wouldn't even call them minute, but he's talking about these details regarding how the Tower of Orthanc is depicted, what it looks like, how he described it, and then what the hobbits were doing. That is in his canon, and he's clearly saying that what this guy is doing is absolutely wrong. It does not make any sense. What is he doing? I don't like that. That is not what I wrote. That is not in the original source material. That is not in the canon. He's pointing this out, and he does this throughout this entire letter. I just shared 2 examples right here of that. So I think it is safe to conclude that there clearly is canon in the Lord of the Rings and J.R.R. Tolkien's works. And this guy, Corey Olsen, is clearly just out here selling himself to Amazon in order to try and gain benefit for himself. And all he's done is kind of just ruined his own reputation and kind of cemented himself as a sellout by constantly lying and trying to defend this absolute garbage show. But let me know what you guys make of this. Let me know in the comments below. Remember to always be charitable, especially to each other, but to always speak the truth.